All right. Welcome to, this is a free live webinar that I offer every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Today, I'm going to focus on thoracic mobility. And thoracic mobility is really important. I'm guessing perhaps you have felt some tension in your shoulders, upper body, maybe even have some issues in back discomfort somewhere here in the middle portion of your torso. Just so that I cover all my bases, I just want to point out what thoracic means. And here on this is Fergus, my skeleton to demonstrate. So we have three sections to the spine. We have the lumbar, which is the lower back. We have the thoracic spine, which is T1 through 12. And we have the cervical spine, which is C1 through 7. So today, I'm primarily focusing on working mobility for this middle section of the back. What's really interesting is that the lumbar and the cervical have the greatest potential for flexion and extension. Flexion is when we bring our body forward, and extension is when we go into a back bend. The thoracic spine has limited range of motion in relation to flexion and extension. The other two movements that I'll speak about or we'll talk about in practice working on opening is lateral flexion, which is side bending, and then also rotation, which is rotating the spine. And a quick story, I was training for teacher training with my teacher, Tim Miller, in California, getting ready to go flying out. And in the process of getting ready for the training, I dislocated a rib on my back. And what sometimes can happen is where the rib attaches onto the vertebra, there's what's called a facet joint, and the rib head can slip off of the spinous process. It was so unbelievably painful. I tried everything, chiropractic, acupuncture. I hung from hammocks. I even drove myself to the emergency room. That is how bad it got. What I want to show you today is some different movements that I like to use whenever I start to get the telltale symptoms that I'm starting to feel some discomfort. Funnily enough, I must have slept a little wrong last night, and I do have like a little slight kind of pinch right here in my back today. So perfect for today because I'll demonstrate a couple of things that I like to use and do to help to alleviate some of that discomfort. A couple things I'll recommend for you to get a hold of if you don't already have these in your yoga practice quiver is a yoga block. Super easy to find, no problem there. Another tool that I love and use regularly is a foam roller. Again, super easy to find on in any outlet store / obviously you can go online. And a little bit more of an upgrade, but one of my favorite back therapy tools is a yoga wheel. Again, you can get one of these anywhere online. This one I love because it has a little bit of a cushion on it, like a yoga mat glued onto the wheel, so when you lay on it, it's a little more comfortable. And my other favorite go-to thoracic mobility tool is some sort of bolster, but this is a nice like official yoga bolster, but you can use a yoga mat rolled up, you can use a blanket rolled up, you can use a pillow. Usually you have cushions on your couch and or something at home that can suffice. Okay, so in relation to flexion and extension, let me go ahead and start off with the foam roll. So if we can get something underneath our body, one of the main ideas is to get some back bending motion by rolling across a tool such as a foam roller. This is one of my most favorite go-to stretches, and taking the arms above the head also does a great job of helping to release and relax the thoracic spine. Another thing that I love to do on the foam roll is do a side laying position so that can work out some lateral flexion, some of the side bending. Some of these exercises, I want you to be very careful and cautious. I highly recommend that you visit either orthopedic and or chiropractic to be able to get x-rays and or MRIs if you are having really extreme back pain. If you have an idea, if you have a herniation, a bulging disc, or if there's degenerative disc disease, we need to work in a way that's appropriate for the spine. But here what I'm doing is just basically rolling across the foam roller and even using my arm above the head to create a little bit of side bending motion in the spine. Also, just rolling a little forward and back can do wonders. And really a lot of it's figuring out what feels good. If something hurts, I don't recommend doing it. If you're feeling pretty comfortable, another technique that's nice is you get on the foam roller and do some very simple rotation exercises. So while you have a little bit of pressure on your back, you can work right and left to get some pressure onto your back muscles. If you have discomfort, if we're sitting at a desk for long hours throughout the day, letting your body hang back and stretching arms above the head is great. The other tool that everybody, this is probably the least expensive of all the tools to get a hold of, is the yoga block. And we can use it in a very similar fashion. So the block can obviously be made, really narrow, middle, or super high. I suggest start off pretty chill on the low level, and you just take the block, you find the right position, you put it in between the shoulder blades. You can even let your head relax against the block. If you need a pillow for your head, you can always prop something up underneath. And basically, we just want to get this curve in the back to help open up extension in the spine, which does feel really, really good. I like that one a lot. Now, in terms of flexion, these tools can be used similarly. I don't like to use the foam roller so much to lay my body on top of, because I feel like it's a little bit extreme to put pressure onto the rib cage on a surface as firm as this. So the yoga wheel, and or if you have a exercise ball, which are those, you pump up the large exercise ball, you can lay on top of it and round your body to get some flexion in your spine. Now, one of the most classic movements that without any props necessary is the cow and the cat pose. So working the extension and flexion in the spine is a great way to improve the thoracic mobility. But with the yoga wheel and a cushion, such as this bolster, this nice thick bolster, it feels really good to put the body on top of something that you can work a little forward and you can work a little back and work the flexion motion of the spine, where you can rest the body. You don't have to hold yourself up, and it can really stretch and open up the posterior, the back portion of the spine. Good. Another couple techniques that you can utilize in relation to rotation. So if we're sitting at a desk, now here I'm on the floor, I want to be at camera level with you, but if you can do this sitting in a chair. If you're at a desk, you can do it sitting at a desk. But some really simple rotational movements where we work twisting. And in this case, I'm going to put my hand on my knee, but if you're seated on a chair, you can always grab the corner of a desk, or you can grab your leg, and or you can take your hand, if we're going to twist to the right, your right hand behind you, maybe even grab the back of the chair, or just simply put your hand, here in this case on the floor, and we're going to attempt to articulate vertebra by vertebra rotation in the spine, eventually culminating or following through with letting the neck rotate as well. But practice breathing when you're working with rotation. Start off really gentle, and when you breathe in, use the inhalation, the expansion of your rib cage to help create a little bit more movement in the intercostal space in between the ribs. But also, as you're breathing, there's very subtle movement that happens with all the muscles that attach onto your spinal column. we have a whole bunch of interspinal muscles that connect vertebra by vertebra. Some of them crisscross from the spinous process to the transverse process. And then we also have long cord-like muscles called the erector spinae that run down along superficially on the posterior spine. So what we want to do is be able to work really deep musculature as well as superficial. So simple rotation exercises, and again, it's a good idea always just to start off really gentle. Always make your focus breath and breathing nice and steady, easy style breathing. And so here are some simple rotation movements. Another go-to for the rotation side is to lie down onto your back and work the supine twist. Now, we obviously are going to be affecting the low back and the upper back. There'll be a little bit of rotation in the low spine and upper spine if we rotate the head. But by just doing some real simple spine twist motions, supine spine twist, where we lay on the back and we rotate knees to the right and or rotate, well, obviously we're going to go and to the left. And this way, this creates some real subtle motion into the spinal column. Now, these are some very easy, gentle positions that can be used. Another one that's a great one for working the flexion of the spine. And I want to point this out on the skeleton. Notice that when, in this case, this isn't the best representation of exactly how our bodies will move. But notice that in this situation where I'm going to have my skeleton friend here do a little bit of flexion motion, because there's this little bit of space here in between each of the vertebrae. When we're standing tall, we have, these have a little bit of space, and then when we flex forward, we're going to increase very gently the space in between the spinous processes. So all these interspinal muscles that connect onto the backbones can loosen and lengthen. So there is a pose called rabbit pose, Sasangasana, which is a little bit more involving. However, let me go ahead and demonstrate it, because in this one, I'm going to be tucked in really deep, and I know that when I have my microphone here, it might get really loud when I'm upside down, but let me demonstrate it first, and then I'll explain a little bit more about what's going on. In this case, I'm sitting on my heels, and I realize that not everybody can practice this pose because of the intensity of the knee flexion and the ankle pointing, or the plantar flexion of the feet. However, let me give you a couple of options. One way this can be done is you just start off on your hands and knees, and you practice bringing your head down onto the floor very gently and ever so slightly round the body forward and back. The key here is we're not putting any pressure on the neck at all. My head was lightly touching just to give me just the tiniest little bit of leverage, but you don't want to put pressure or weight on your head in this situation, especially if you're working through some discomfort on your back. So again, this one is a little easier on the knees. I just bring my head down very lightly and practice rock forward and back a few times just to really stretch the posterior surface. The classic rabbit pose goes a little deeper in that we catch our heels, and we start by, again, I'll demonstrate, then talk. So the idea is a rounding motion of the spine, starting at the chin, going vertebra by vertebra, working down the body. But that one does put a lot more pressure of the head on the floor, and I really want you to be careful with your neck. So, but that is one of my faves for the flexion motion for increasing spine mobility. There are a whole host of other yoga asana. Another one that comes to mind is what's called Mrityasana C. In Mrityasana C, if we start with our legs together in a seated position, and you bend one knee up, you put in this case, right knee is up, right hand on floor behind. And if you just use your elbow, your arm. Now, when working in rotation of the spine, something that we see that we want to be careful of is sometimes we'll end up flexing really deep in the spine and then attempting to make twist. And this can be a little risky in relation to the way that it puts pressure around the SI joints, which are down here at the base of the spine. I want to make sure I point out these anatomical terminology to you so that you'll learn it. And also, I'm not speaking a foreign language, but where your sacrum bones are here, S1, S5 through S5, they're fused. But where they join the ilium is called the sacroiliac joint. There is the potential for some range, some movement in the sacroiliac joints. When we're born as babies, there's a lot of movement, but by the time we're about 40, somewhere around about there, they start to fuse. So some of these motions are good for maintaining mobility, gentle mobility in and around the SI joints. Okay, so I was going on with the adjust and a C and how to twist. So try to eliminate dumping the energy into your back where you round. Use your back arm as like a staff or a stick. And in the beginning, the main idea with twisting is to try to get the spine relatively erect. Now, it's a little bit easier to do that when I'm seated in a cross-leg shape because I can get my pelvis to anteriorly tilt and sit level. When we go into a position like this where the knee is bending, notice that now my pelvis starts to posteriorly tilt. It tips back. So that's why we need something behind us, like an arm, like your arm, to press down and get the spine to go up nice and straight. So once you are able to achieve this lift in the spine, you can start to work rotation and go vertebra by vertebra and not overly compress around the disc space in your lower back. So, of course, you'll always go to the right side, and even if it's just the right side that gives you the most relief, definitely go again toward the left side. So, in relation to the story I was telling you about having extreme back pain with my dislocated rib, how that played out was it took some time. I finally got to a chiropractor that was able to get the rib head back on, which was about 2 weeks later. And then it took a little while for it to heal. Now I'm really aware of how my body is. When I start to get those symptoms that, like today where I woke up and I feel a little stiff, I'm going to stay away from certain positions that I know put too much pressure on my middle back. This might sound a little extreme, but of course something like putting a leg behind a head is too much. Another thing that I'm also really aware of is headstanding. If I'm starting to feel a little bit of tension in my mid-back, putting my head on the ground and standing on my head and lifting my body up probably is not the best thing to do. But some very simple therapeutic yoga poses, such as some flexion and extension, some lateral flexion, and some rotation, is a good way to maintain thoracic mobility. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to just check out see if anyone left a comment. If you are watching, if you can type in hashtag Native Yoga Center, I much appreciate that. Remember, this is recorded, and so, well, you probably already know that because you've watched this recorded version, but I upload these onto YouTube, so they're all available on our YouTube channel, which is Native Yoga Center. If you give a comment, if you hit that little like button and a comment, that really helps our channel to grow. We greatly appreciate it. Also, I'm super excited about some of the guests that I have coming up on my podcast channel called Native Yoga Toddcast. And I won't share their names yet, but I have a couple people who they're really well known, and I'm so excited to bring them to you. So stay posted and tuned for that. All right, let me check out, see if you have some questions, comments. All righty. Let's see if you're on. I am streaming this onto the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. If you're on any of those platforms, you just go down the question section below and just say, hey, Todd, or something like my back feels great, or what do I do in this situation or that situation, please feel free to do that. Part of the purpose of why I like to utilize this format, yay, made it Yoga Center. Thanks, Stephen. Thank you, Native Yoga Center. Thank you. It was a great lesson in thoracic mobility. Thanks, Lauren and Stephen. So good to see you guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so one of my goals with this format is to give an opportunity to be able to interact in the live stream world. And so because we're live streaming all of our classes, I'm not able to see the practitioners while I'm teaching. And so I'm utilizing this technique so that if there are any questions, I just want to kind of build a little bit more ability for me to answer and talk and communicate with the live stream world. So thanks again. And next week will be traveling and unable to do this segment, but I will schedule the one 2 weeks on the Thursday to come up with a new subject and topic. And on that note, if you have any questions, like I'm wondering how to practice the Urdhva Dhanurasana, which is the back bend, or I recently stubbed my toe and I'm not sure how to go from up dog to down dog without hurting my toe. The cool thing is that a lot of the yoga is, you trial and error, and you have the innate intelligence to work a lot of this out. So I guess the moral of the story is trust in yourself and in your practice, keep practicing, and I will see you next time. Yeah, I'm glad your back feels great.